Hey everyone, we're looking at polynomials and quadratics. This is section B. We're looking at lesson 3, completing the square. This is another method of factoring, and there's a couple steps to it. I'm going to go through one example all the way through. So again, to remind you, that standard form of that polynomial, the trinomial, quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 is important to start off with that. This example, and a question that you might see as you're working through some, is just to get that first step down, because there's a one very important but very different step involved with completing the square. And that is we have to add some number, and that's what this is asking us to figure out. When we're looking at this, of course, we always start when we are factoring to factor out a GCD if there is one. There is not in this case. X squared minus 9x plus 38 equals 0. There's nothing to factor out of here. So this is what we're working with. When we are completing the square, the very first step is we need to rearrange the way that the polynomial is written. We want to have that c term over on the right. So all we need to do is just subtract c from both sides. Or if c was negative, we'd add it. So the first step, just rewriting, we end up with x squared minus 9x equals negative 38. So there's a first step. The second step, this is the part that this question is asking you to do, the completing the square here. What is the number that would have to be added? To figure that out, it's just the b over 2, or 1/2 b squared term. So in this case, our b term is negative 9. So it's going to be negative 9 over 2, and then we're squaring that whole thing. Once you simplify it, you end up with, in this case, 20.25. You can just type that whole thing in your calculator. If you want, be careful with your parentheses, make sure you're using them. So we've got that b value. And if you were just answering this question, you'd be done. This would be your answer. So if you have this example, you could type that in and you're done. We're going to actually go through the whole process, though, of solving and completing the square. So our next step, we'll call this step 3, is going to be to go ahead and actually add that to both sides. So we have x squared minus 9x, that's what we started with, but now we need to add that 20.25 from the last step to both sides, equals negative 38 plus 20.25. Okay, so there we've got that. Step 4 is going to be to kind of simplify and factor. So number 4, we're going to factor the left side of this equation, because notice now this is another like trinomial. We have ax squared plus bx plus a c, right? And then we have this right side, and we want to simplify that. When I am factoring this left side, the reason that this is called completing the squares, because essentially we've made this into like this into a perfect square by adding that 1/2 b squared term. So now I know that it's just going to be, when I factor it, it's going to be a binomial, and it's going to be x minus 4.5 squared. I know that it's 4.5 because that's half of 9. And remember that these terms, when we multiply, are what gets added together to end up creating the middle term. And I know that 4.5 squared is what's going to get me that 20.25. So that's how I kind of know, it's just a binomial. And I know that it's subtraction in this case because I know how I want my negative and positive to end up. So there's that. We didn't, and then on the right side, we just want to combine. Negative 38 plus 20.25 is negative 17.75. So now we got that, and we can solve for x. So step 5, if you want to call it a different step, you can. Maybe this is kind of the same step, but step 5 now, I'm running out of color, so just repeat pink. We're going to square root both sides. Once I do that, I get x minus 4.5 on the left equals the square root of negative 17.75. And this is kind of a sneak peek for you. When you end up with a negative in the radical, that's called a complex number. We're not going to actually formalize that yet. That's a future lesson in this section. You won't have examples like this when you're completing the square. Your answer under the radical will be positive so that you can simplify. But one more step, we need to add 4.5 to both sides. So I get x equals, and I missed a step. This should be positive or negative, right? Because when we take the square root of something, the answer could be positive or could be negative, because negative, like 2 squared is 4, but also 2 squared is 4, for example. So we always got to say that positive or negative. So this equals, x equals positive or negative, square root of negative 17.75 plus 4.5. And this would be my final answer. Hopefully not too much more. Hopefully it's not too frightening. But let's take a look. We've got another example. I have 2x squared plus 4x minus 22. I'm giving you a big hint here. Always start by factoring out the GCD if there is one. There is one in this case. So you're going to factor that out and then go from there. Pause the video. Go ahead and get started. Try it on your own. When you get stuck or you want to check your answer, hit resume and I'll remove the boxes. All right, so here are the terms. You can kind of see them. And then, so somehow I've got A is 1, B is 2, and C is negative 11. Notice that doesn't quite match what's here, but that's okay because what's happened, I factored something out. So there's another clue if you want to pause it. Maybe you got stuck before you just take a look at the answer. And here you go. It was 2 that we factored out. They're all even numbers, so I factored 2 out of both sides. And when I divide this side by 2, it turns into x squared plus 2x minus 11. And when I divide the right side by 2, 0 divided by 2 is still just 0. So very handy. We just switch it around. And we, once we're here, now I can divide both sides and the 2 is gone. So now it's just x squared plus 2x minus 11 equals 0. And then we can go from there. Here's another example for you. We've got x squared minus 2x minus 63. Pause it. I'll remove the box so you can take a look at the steps. Welcome back. Here you go. Started by adding 63. There's no GCD on there, and this one came out to a very nice answer because we got square root of 64, which is 8. And then you're either adding or subtracting 1. Or I'm sorry, you're either taking positive or negative 8 and then adding 1 to it. Here's another example. Pause it, give it a try, hit resume when you're ready to see. All right, here are the terms. You can kind of see I just wrote out the b equals 20, getting you started there. Half of 20 is 10, 10 squared is 100. So you should be adding to both sides. And here's the rest of the work so you can see. Got x equals positive or negative square root 14 minus 10. Hope this helps. That is completing the square. Have a great day.